I watched Adolescence, and here is what I thought. So, if you haven't heard of this show, here is just a little synopsis about it. So, this is a show that takes place in England, and it follows a teenage boy named Jamie who is arrested for a murder. And the person he is accused of murdering is one of his classmates, actually named Katie. This show is only 4 episodes, but let me just tell you, they are 4 powerful episodes. And during these 4 episodes, we follow the case in a single shot. So they do not do any cuts during any of the episodes. So each episode is flowing with just a single shot, which is already impressive with itself. But this show is following Jamie and his family during this time. And we don't know anything really about Katie too much in this show. It's mostly focusing on Jamie's side, what he's going through, and what his family is going through during this time. And this show, since it's following these 2 people, we're mostly following the why on why certain things happened and what led to Katie's death. So I have been seeing so many people talk about this show and have so many good reviews. So that is the major reason why I decided to give this show a watch, just because everyone was talking about it and saying it was really good. I didn't really know too much about the show because once I saw the good reviews, I didn't want to get spoiled. So I kind of just saw a lot of people talking about it, but didn't want to see the detail and what they were talking about exactly. So I kind of went into the show without knowing as much as I possibly could before seeing the show, because I wanted to have the full effect. I wanted to know why people thought it was so great, and I wanted to go through like someone who didn't know too much before I actually watched this show. And let me just say, I'm glad I did that, because I'm glad nothing was spoiled for me, and I'm glad I got to take in the show without knowing too much about it. So now I'll be getting into spoiler territory. So if you haven't watched the show and you don't want to get spoiled, this is where you can click off and then come back after you did watch the show. But if you do not care, let's continue. So for kind of this video, I'm going to be going through each episode a little bit more in detail. Since there's only 4, I thought it would be okay just to highlight each episode and see what were the big things that kind of happened or the things I enjoyed watching throughout this show. Let's start with episode 1, the episode that started it all and kind of was the introduction into this entire show. So as the episode starts, there is kind of a calm. It's just the 2 officers talking about any regular day. They're in their cop car and they're just, having a little chat. And then shortly after, the chaos happens. The police barge into a house and they have a warrant and they start searching throughout the house and end up arresting the son, Jamie. The family has no idea what's going on. They just know these police officers came to their house, barged in, and is arresting their son, but they don't really know what's going on. Then we end up going to the police station and we kind of see what Jamie's going through on his end, on what he's getting processed and the procedure they have to go through since they did arrest him. Eventually we see the family join Jamie at the police station and they can't all see him, and they still at this point don't really know what is happening or what he's being charged for. A public defender does end up coming to the police station, and Jamie can only have one parent with him at this time, and he chooses his dad to be with him. So Jamie and his dad kind of talk to the public defender together. There's some more things they have to do, searching Jamie and certain things like that, with his dad there as the parental figure. And because I believe they might be in high school, but they're very, very young. They're teenagers. And it's like going through a very traumatic event, like being arrested, going through all of this, and your family doesn't really know what's going on. And so at this point, I'm very shocked and oh my goodness, I can't believe he's going through all this. What is happening? What is going on? Because us as a viewer, we really don't know too much either. So when Jamie and his dad have a full sit down with the public defender, they kind of let him know what had happened, what's going on. And the public defender says the police wouldn't have been able to do what they did if they didn't have strong evidence. And then when he says that, I'm thinking, what do the police have on Jamie that they were able to barge into his house and arrest him like that? So again, we don't really know a whole lot that's going on. We just know that the public defender said they have some strong evidence. So I'm ready. The episode is building up and I'm okay, what is going to happen next? So before the official interrogation happens with Jamie, Jamie's kind of with his dad alone, and his dad looks at him and says, "Jamie, did you do it?" And Jamie looks him in the face and says no. And then we get into the interrogation, and the police are asking questions about the last night. He's like, "Where were you? Who you with?" And this is where we as the audience find out more about why he's arrested and kind of what took place that night. So it seems that Jamie was hanging out with some of his friends last night, and they mentioned the death of his classmate Katie and how she was around them and near them the same time that they were out and about. And we find out that they are questioning him about her death, how she died, and questioning him about his whereabouts. And they show photo evidence about him being near Katie, and it looks like he's following Katie when he sees her. And in my head, I'm like, okay, what's about to happen? Why is he following her? All this stuff. And there's a point kind of in the interrogation where the public defender or Jamie's like, maybe we should take a break. And the dad's like, no, he said he was innocent. He's like, it's okay, keep going. And then they pull up the video. And let me tell you, the video was the big mic drop moment in this episode. Because in the video, we see Jamie hurting Katie. And Katie ends up dying right after that. You see him leave and you see her lifeless body. And I believe he stabbed her with a knife. And when I saw that video, my mouth dropped. Because this whole time, Jamie is saying he didn't do it. He didn't do it. He told his dad, looked his dad in the eye and said he didn't do it. And then the police showed this video. And it was really like shocking. My mouth dropped. And just seeing the look on the dad's face when he saw the video, the physical evidence of what his son did after his son told him he didn't do it, it was really heartbreaking. And especially as a parent, having to see your child do something so violent to someone else. And there's a point after the video is shown that the police leave the room, and then the public defender leaves the room, and it's just Jamie and his dad in the interrogation room. And there's a point where Jamie kind of reaches for his dad, and his dad like shies away from him and is like literally crying. And then eventually he goes back to Jamie and they hug each other, and it's like, what did you do? Like, his dad is devastated, Jamie's crying, his dad is crying, because it's like, you can't deny what's on this video. This is physical evidence of what you did. And I felt so bad for his dad. And that is how the first episode ended. Like, such a great first episode. And during the whole episode, you definitely felt the build up to that final moment with his dad seeing the video and seeing what his son had done. But at the end of the episode, it had me thinking, well, what happens next? What will the rest of the show be? And I'm wondering, will this be about a trial? Will this be about a team helping prove Jamie's innocence during this whole time? I wasn't really sure where the show was gonna go, because typically in similar shows, you have a build up to the very end of a court case where they find the person guilty or not guilty, and they have all this evidence. But in this instant, we know Jamie did it, and they ended it like that in the first episode. So again, me watching this, I was like, okay, now we know who did it. So what's the next step? Like, what is this rest of the show going to be about? Okay, now let's move on to episode 2. So in episode 2, we mostly focus around the school that Katie and Jamie went to. And the police officers are mostly focusing on finding out more information kind of about why what happened to Katie took place. Kind of just want more background info. So the same officers that arrested Jamie, they end up going to the school and asking students questions about Katie and about Jamie. And I do want to say that this episode, I think, was probably my least favorite. And I think it's because it came after episode 1 and it just felt a bit slower. Episode 1, it was kind of like calm at the beginning, and then immediately we got into the chaos of the show, and you're kind of questioning like, what's happening? What's going to happen next? Did he do it? Like, what do the police have on him? In episode 2, now we already know what Jamie did, and the police officers are just, looking into more information. But what we did learn in this episode is more about the relationship between Jamie and Katie. So one of the cops has a son at the school, and while the cops are going around the school and trying to find out more information, they're really getting a whole bunch of nothing. They're not getting too much to help them further along in their case. But once the police officer's son comes to him, he's like, I need to talk to you. So he talks to him and he tells him a little bit more about Jamie and Katie and kind of what's been going on in the school. So it turns out that on social media, there would be a lot of comments left on Jamie's Instagram, and they weren't kind comments. And they were things talking about like a red pill and blue pill and kind of bullying Jamie in his comments. And it seems that Katie was one of the people that would be making these rude comments in his Instagram. So definitely this adds to the case on why Jamie would have, or maybe one reason why Jamie would want to hurt Katie. And the Sun does get more and detailed a little bit more about what exactly was going on. I never really heard about this red pill or blue pill thing at all, so that was all new to me, and I had to kind of like look it up to see what it was about. So when I looked up more to see what it kind of was about, red pill, and this is from the website childrenfirst.org, and the title of this article is Let's Talk About Staying Safe Online. So when I read this article, there's definitely a lot of people talking about it, but a lot of people were talking about what does this mean in reference to this show. And so when I looked at about exactly kind of what it meant, red pill is kind of like I see the truth, and it's used in toxic male spaces to mean waking up to supposed hidden truths about women in society, often linked to misogynistic ideologies. Blue pill represents those who are blind to the truth or still believe in mainstream views about relationships and gender dynamics. And there's other emojis kind of like dynamite, kidney bean, 100, black hole, tornado, frog, eagle, skull. So there's a lot of emojis in referencing to this and kind of the view on gender roles and regarding men and how men see women and things like that. But I believe there's also something about 80% of women being attracted to 20% of men, and how I believe Jamie was getting made fun of because he wasn't part of that 20% of men that women are attracted to. And this was all just used through emojis, and these emojis just have certain meanings. And that was a layer of this investigation in this case that we did not know about. We didn't know that people were coming into his comments and saying hurtful things. It might have just looked like regular things to the normal eye, but again, some of these emojis had other meanings to mean to be hurtful to Jamie. So that was something that was also uncovered during episode 2, and we kind of got a little bit more information about this relationship again between Katie and Jamie. Now we will be talking about episode 3. And in episode 3, we learn that some time has passed. So it looks like Jamie has been put in a place for teens. Maybe it wasn't like a juvenile detention or anything like that. It just seemed like a place for troubled teens or teens with other mental issues. But in this episode, it really focuses on a discussion with Jamie. So Jamie meets with a psychologist, and this isn't their first time that they're meeting. So they've had discussions before. And we also learned that this isn't the only psychologist that Jamie has seen. But it looks like these psychologists that he is seeing are there to learn about his mental state or how his thinking is. And I believe it's going to be used in the case regarding Katie's death. So this episode in particular, it isn't really extravagant. There isn't a whole lot going on as background or the imagery of the scene, I should say, if that makes sense. Majority of this episode is just two people in a room with a table and some chairs, and that's Jamie and this psychologist. There's not a whole lot of background people. There's not a whole lot of other things going on. It's just the two of them having a discussion. But in the context of like the material and the acting and the emotions that are portrayed in this episode, chef's kiss. Amazing. And I feel like in this episode in particular, we really get a look into more of Jamie's brain and how he thinks and kind of how he feels about this situation. So the psychologist asks Jamie questions. Some of them in the beginning are just mostly like, how are you? Introductory questions, very basic. But then we get into the more serious ones that the psychologist is using to kind of know how Jamie thinks. And so she begins to ask how his dad acts, how his grandfather acts, and how he feels when they act like that. Or do you think that is how a man is supposed to act? Things like that. And kind of when she starts beginning to talk about his father, his demeanor changes a bit. And when there are topics he doesn't want to talk about, he does get very angry. And there are points when he is yelling, he's standing up from the table, has a very aggressive demeanor. It was actually very scary how angry he gets, because we know from episode 1 that he can get so angry that he can hurt people. It was also interesting to watch him and how he used his anger and his emotions to feel as though he was in control. And it was almost like he enjoyed that she was scared of him. And I'm wondering if he would have had the same demeanor or gotten as angry or felt as in control if it was a man. But because she was a woman, and I believe his thinking on how a man and a woman's roles should be, if that played a part in how he wanted to be in control in that situation. So in episode 2, as mentioned before, we learned that there was some bullying going on to Jamie from Katie. And in this episode, in episode 3, we learn a little bit more about the relationship between Katie and Jamie and what interactions they had. So Jamie was talking and he mentions that there have been some inappropriate pictures of Katie that went around school. I believe a guy she liked, she sent him pictures and he ended up sending them pictures around. And Jamie said he had seen these pictures and he liked the pictures. And after that, he made a statement about how he asked her out after this whole thing had happened. And I'm paraphrasing, but he does make a statement and saying she was kind of more vulnerable, kind of at her lowest, and maybe her options weren't as wide as they were before this incident. So he decided to shoot his shot when she was at her lowest, thinking she would be a little bit more vulnerable or more likely to say yes to him. So then he asked her out, and Katie ends up turning him down and says she isn't that desperate. And just hearing those words, I know that had to sting, because already we know he was being bullied and he might not feel like the most handsome guy, and just having her say that, and that probably hurt. But also hearing him say, well, she was at her lowest, and I was like, why not? She's probably gonna say yes to me now. It's kind of icky the way he said that. And there's even a point while he's talking, and I do believe he's kind of just talking and he doesn't maybe realize everything he's saying. And while he's talking, he does mention the night of Katie's death. But when he is talking about it, he says something along the lines of, I could have done a lot worse. I could have forced myself on her. Some other men would probably have done that, but I didn't do that. That's what makes me better. That's better, right? And you can see the psychologist's face is like, what did you just say? And exactly what her face was mine. I was like, did he just say what I think he said? He's like, oh, I could have done worse, but I didn't. Like, just hearing him say that was like, no, dude. And does he really understand I don't even know. I'm not a psychologist, but him saying I could have done worse and talking about what he did to her that night and how she's no longer here is crazy to me. And again, I'm not sure what he's actually thinking in this moment, because it feels like something's not clicking. And he doesn't seem to have any type of remorse for what he did do. And shortly after that, the psychologist says kind of like, this is our last meeting. We're not going to be talking to each other after this. And that kind of sets Jamie off again. And kind of towards the end of this episode, he's like, well, do you like me? He's like, not like a relationship or physical wife, but do you like me as a person? And you can see how he just wants to be liked. And that part definitely was very sad. And it really was a complete 180. We saw this boy talking about how, oh, I could have done worse, not having remorse, not really showing any sadness towards what he did to Katie. And we saw the anger he had and how he wanted to have kind of like power and control of the situation of the room. And now we see this part of this just young kid of what he actually should be, just wants to be liked, doesn't want to be someone who's bullied or doesn't think highly of themselves. It's almost like two or completely different people having a conversation with. It was really sad in the end, because there were parts in their conversation where he doesn't really think highly of himself. He doesn't really think he's a good looking person. And I guess people saying those things in his comments were kind of feeding into those insecurities. And maybe that all led up to what happened to Katie with this volatile emotions that he can have. And it was just a very powerful episode. And again, so many emotions for the psychologist side, and just kind of what she's going through and seeing him, even in a point where she is kind of scared of him. And then we see his emotions where it's up and down and he's going through a lot, and maybe he just doesn't know how to fully get through all those emotions in a very healthy way. So it was a very powerful episode. I definitely feel like we learn a lot about Jamie in this episode, and maybe even some things he didn't intentionally mean to say, but we kind of learn more about his thinking about that night and about his relationships and how he thinks men should be and maybe how women should be as well. But I think this one was one of my favorite episodes in the show. It was so good. Okay, and now we will get into episode 4, the final episode of this show. So in episode 4, we really focus on Jamie's family in this episode and kind of what they are going through in their perspective. So on this day in this episode, some even more time has passed. I'm not sure exactly how long it has been. It might be close to a year, but a lot of time has passed since the initial first episode of this show. And we learn that it is the father's birthday. And in the beginning of the episode, it is kind of light and funny with the father and the mom. And they also have a daughter who's older than Jamie. And they're kind of talking about his birthday and what he wants to do. And we kind of see in the beginning it's kind of light. And I believe Jamie sent him a card. So there is a little bit of sadness knowing like where their son is. He's not with them. He's in another facility. And he sent them a card and saying happy birthday to his dad. But then the happy day kind of turns not into a happy one later. So when the dad goes outside, he sees that his work van has been vandalized and it has a derogatory term on it. So he decides to go to like a hardware store like Home Depot or Lowe's. So he gets in the truck with his wife and his daughter and they go to this like hardware store just to get paint over what was painted on his van. So while he's in there, he's already frustrated, but then someone kind of recognizes him because of the case that's going around in the town, and he gets even more frustrated and he ends up going out to the van and kind of like throwing paint on the van instead of painting it over in a nice way. He just throws the can of paint in the van and it splatters, and then he sees the kids that kind of vandalize his van and he kind of chases after them, and one of them kind of left their bike and he throws the bike towards the kids and yells at them. He's like, "Don't come near me anymore, leave our family alone." And because he's doing this, he's causing a spectacle at the hardware store, and kind of security comes and is like, "Sir, you need to leave." So definitely very high emotions on his birthday. So after that whole debacle at the store, they get back in the van and they're heading back towards their house. And while they're in the van, Jamie calls and he's on speaker, and he called his dad, talked to his dad, and he ends up telling his dad that he's gonna plead guilty. And he's like, "I think I just need to do it. I'm just gonna plead guilty." And then there's silence in the whole van. And that part was kind of heartbreaking, just like the whole family hearing that Jamie is gonna plead guilty, and kind of like, wow, this is, I don't know, maybe it's like this realization or something stuck. It's like, wow, this is actually happening. My son's pleading guilty to this crime. Then Jamie finds out eventually that he's on speaker in the phone and that his mom and his sister heard. You can tell that he was like not happy with that idea. He just wanted to talk to his dad. But now the whole family knows that Jamie decided to plead guilty to this. And then for the rest of the car ride home, it was very quiet. Definitely think they are all taking it in and I guess have to figure out what's going to happen next. Once they do get home, we see the dad and the mom kind of go upstairs and they're talking. And I think maybe this episode might have been one of the saddest, because they're talking about their son and how they're like, how did we not see the signs? And the father's like, is this my fault? Because we did see part of his temper at the hardware store, and now he's kind of blaming himself for what Jamie did to this girl. He's like, is this my fault? Is this because of me? Like, did I give this to him? And the mom's like, no, you didn't give this to him. You didn't do this. Jamie made this decision. And they're both kind of like reflecting and talking as parents about what they could have done better to make sure that this didn't happen, that their son didn't take someone's life. And honestly, I was blubbering and crying this entire ending of the episode, because that is really sad. Like, as two people who raise their child, you want the best for them. You want them to reach their dreams and have a happy life. But I don't think you ever think about them taking a life from someone else and purposely doing it, like going to someone and taking their life. You don't plan for that. That's not supposed to happen. And now you're a parent thinking about everything, maybe every discussion or maybe every little thing where there might have been a sign that you could have seen to stop this. So that was definitely a hard part to watch in this episode. And really during the whole show, just seeing these two parents that love both of their kids and trying to figure out like what they did wrong. And honestly, they can't really do that. They can't blame themselves too much for this, because in the end it was Jamie who made this decision and did do this horrible thing. And then at the ending of the episode, we have the mother kind of leave the father alone for him to get changed, and they kind of still want to celebrate his birthday, so she leaves him to get changed. And we do see like the final scene is him going to Jamie's room, and it kind of does look exactly the same from the short picture that we got in the beginning of this show. And he goes into Jamie's bedroom, and he kind of like has this little teddy bear, and he kind of tucks the teddy bear into the bed like it's Jamie. And kind of it feels like every emotion this father has felt throughout this entire case is he's letting it out here in this scene with him just by himself in his son's room, kind of mourning the loss of his son, because he's pleading guilty, and we don't know the sentencing for Jamie, but he probably won't get to have his son in his house for a very long time, if ever. And everything's different now. He basically kind of lost who his son was, or who he thought his son was. And it was very emotional kind of seeing everything hit this father at once, and especially on his birthday after his son told him like, I'm gonna plead guilty to this. So I really felt so bad for this family. There was even a part in this particular episode where they were talking and they were like, do you think we should move? They were even asking their daughter, because she's supposed to go to school in this town, and they were kind of having just a little discussion as a family. And she was like, if we go somewhere else and they find out, then this will start all over again. Like, let's just stay here. And she's like, Jamie is ours. Like, he's our son, he's our brother, like he's ours. Like, we have to be there for him. And not saying that they agree or defending him or what he did, but they're his family, and they're like, no matter what, like, he's a part of this family, so basically he's ours. And it's just really sad seeing like, and again, the mother and the daughter never saw the video, so they probably don't know the extent of everything that happened. They probably heard, but they didn't see the video. And so just kind of knowing what happened, and that being your relative, and just like, he's ours. It's just, I don't know how I would ever handle that situation. It's just really sad. I feel really bad for the family and what they're going through. Okay, so that was the 4 episodes of Adolescence, and just a brief description of each one and kind of my thoughts on each episode. It definitely is an emotional show, and it definitely makes you think. And that was a whole point of this show by the creators of this show. When I watched a lot of interviews after watching the show, and their whole point was just to get people talking more about kind of what's going on in these schools for young teens and what they're going through, and kind of what they are being taught, not by the school, but like on social media, what they are consuming, and how the people they are consuming are kind of putting these ideas in their head, and how that can lead to dangerous situations. And while watching a lot of these interviews, I was watching a lot of people kind of talk about the show as well and their thoughts. And I don't remember who said it, but I remember watching a video and someone did mention that Jamie never said that he did it. He never confessed. Even in the end, he said he would plead not guilty, but he never in this entire show said that he killed Katie. He never said that. So I think that's something interesting that they pointed out that I didn't even realize, and I'm very telling in Jamie that he still is not saying that at all. But after watching this show, I'm giving it a 4.5. I thoroughly enjoyed this show. It was really good. It was definitely deep and serious, but one thing that really amazed me off the get-go was the single shot of each episode. I'm not gonna lie, episode 1, I don't think I realized it right away, but in episode 2, I definitely realized it was a single shot, and I was like, wait, was the first episode a single shot? And I just didn't realize it right away, which the fact that I didn't realize that was crazy, but I definitely realized by episode 2. So I thought that was really cool. One big thing I liked about the show, and the acting was superb. I think everyone did such a great job in every episode. And the fact that they all acted in a single take, where these episodes were like 45 to an hour long, crazy to me. Like, that just tells you how talented this cast was. I enjoyed the show a lot, And if you liked Adolescence, there is another show that kind of reminded me of this one, and that is Defending Jacob, and that is with Chris Evans, and I believe it was an Apple TV show. Yes, I just double checked, and yes, it was on Apple TV, and it's a limited series, but the basis of the show is that this boy, who I believe is the son of a detective, he is charged with the murder of a classmate. And in this show, similar to Adolescence, we follow the family of the accused. So we follow the family of Jacob in Defending Jacob. As in Adolescence, we follow Jamie's story and his family. And that's another thing that I felt like was different in this show. Like, a lot of times they focus on the victim and more details about the victim and who could have caused harm to the victim. But in these two shows, we follow the family of the accused. And Defending Jacob kind of had that, I don't want to say dark, but more of a serious toned, slower paced show, similar pacing to Adolescence. So immediately when I was watching this show, it reminded me a lot of that show. So maybe if you liked Adolescence, maybe check that one out if you're able to. And again, it is currently streaming on Apple TV. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you thought of Adolescence. And if you have any other recommendations of shows similar to this one, please leave them in the comments below, just so if anyone is interested in more recommendations, they can check out the comments and see. Also, I would love more recommendations for a show like this because I thoroughly enjoyed it. I will link my website down below as well. Feel free to check out more TV content down there. You can follow me on all socials at ATS_MGO on all platforms. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, week, month, and hopefully a good rest of your year. And until next time, bye.